form of work. Okay, recording in progress now. So this is what I'm going to do by sharing the slide first. We would have more clarifications or elaborations later on. Okay, so let me open the slide from my side. And I will also make sure that, okay, wow, let me try to just move a little bit the box. Okay, lovely. As Matthew already mentioned, about a year ago, it was really the first time that I had a visit at UW-Madison. And tonight, or in your morning, we're going to have a conversation. So this is a really wonderful time for start off with the book, Korean, very in-depth studies about the Asia-Pacific region, China, as well as US and China relationship. And also my other mentor, Poon Ai, she has been a great scholar as well as labor activist who had influenced me a lot in terms of shaping the ideas about global capitalism and labor resistance. So we are going to talk about this book, Dying for an iPhone, and very happily, we are going to have the Korean translation coming up very soon. I want to highlight some main arguments in terms of the relationship between labor, the state, and put it into the global context. And within the industrial empire, student interns, they are the young teenage students from vocational schools in China, and they are taken in as the flexible, on-demand, informal factory workers. So how do these programs work out? And what the students are really doing? Are they learning something useful to them, their skills, or not? So I'm going to give some more time on internship. And finally, shifting from factory work, we are going to talk about circulation or logistic and connect to consumption. Dying for an iPhone, the title have a double meaning. It refers to, on the one hand, the workers. A new generation of workers is struggling to meet corporate requirements for speed, precision, quality. In producing our iPhones and other high-tech products, they are literally working to death, keeping lots of overtime. And on the other hand, we, the consumers, cannot wait. We are hungry for the new model of iPhone, and we are queuing up to buy the latest ones. It's an attempt to think about the connection between consumption and global production. The book really starts off 10 years ago. In 2010, 18 young workers, they are all migrants from the countryside and working in Foxconn, the world's largest electronics manufacturer. 14 of them died, 4 survived with crippling injuries, and they were so young, between 17 and 25 years old. Why did they kill themselves when they are in the prime of their youth? But without looking into the root causes, Foxconn just hold the safety net. But these so-called anti-suicide nets, can they really catch human bodies to save lives? We find more information online. A worker put into a very short poem, and I translate here: the use of death is simply to testify that we will ever live at all, and that while we lived, we had only despair, desperation, hopelessness, or alienation from work. These are the very vivid expressions of a desperate worker. And the use of death is just to show that he or she had ever lived in this world. Later on, we met with a survivor. She was 17 years old, had been working on the assembly line, IDPBG. So this is a business group that is only tailored for Apple's product. Of course, Foxconn take also Samsung or IBM, Google, Amazon, many other brands, they also received the orders. But until 2010, Foxconn in the entire world was the only one that assembled iPhones and later on the original iPad. After she regained consciousness after 12 days, she only find that she could no longer walk. From her waist down, she was paralyzed. So it did take quite a long time for us to re-establish our relationship with her, to understand better about the reason why after only working for about a month, she will kill or attempt to kill herself from jumping from the fourth floor of the factory dormitory. So from her story, we understand the migration process much deeper, or in this time, after like 30 or 40 years of urbanization, industrialization in China, but still hundreds of millions of young workers like her have been migrating, moving to the city in finding their hope. In China, totally, we have 1.4 billion people. Nearly 300 of them are these young migrants who are moving in and out without sinking their roots in the cities. For those who are able to do so, they must be working very hard to bring along their parents or their children. Most of them are born after 1980. So this book really builds on the framework of understand these process, their work and employment, and we employ the framework global value chains. I learned a lot from other scholars when they are more critical and put it as the global poverty trends. These workers are just earning not enough even to support themselves, let alone a living wage for their family. So they are actually earning poverty wages, very low wage. We cannot just think about China as getting into global capitalism, have more job opportunities and climbing up. Indeed, there have been contradictions and deep conflicts on the ground, and these workers are not necessarily be better off than where they were from in the rural areas. And we also put it into the framework within China, the China authoritarian regime, how it plays out when these workers try to defend their rights and interests as well as their dignity. So state labor is another axis that we look into the dynamics between these workers and capital as well as state regulations. So just to be quicker from now on, more arguments and figures or evidence are presented in the book. So I will be brief to just let you know how we make this book. And it has been taken for like 10 years. It has been such a long time. So definitely this is a collective efforts. We have been collecting information, talking to these workers, trying to support as much as we can since 2010. And until the coronavirus outbreak, we really have to put an end to a decade-long research. And we finished up writing and publication last year. In the book, what really moved me is the photos, the poetries, the videos, open letters. These are the songs or the cultural arena where workers try to express themselves as someone who need boyfriends, girlfriends, or parental care. They are seeking to build some more meaningful social relation, and that is not capitalist relationship. Capitalist social relations are really exploitative, but what they need are some more fulfilling human-centered relations. And we also collect secondary information from the government and the company. Foxconn is a Taiwanese firm, but it is indeed a global, a multinational or transnational corporation. Wisconsin, we have been following the what people say a nightmare, because the Wisconsin plants never really work out as planned. And in India, Vietnam, and some other parts, Foxconn also have its plants. But it is in China where Foxconn really have the biggest global supply chain or the manufacturing base. There are more than 40 mega plants all around China in the coastal, interior, and the western part. Workers have been doing assembly really from early morning to midnight, 2-shift or 3-shift, all around the clock, 24 hours a day. This is the very centralized high-speed production network that is building on flexible or just-in-time production. Foxconn is a Taiwanese company headquartered in Taipei. The name is Honghai Precision Company Limited, but it has been building the factories in China since late 1980s. And until 2010, as I just mentioned, Foxconn was the exclusive manufacturer of iPhones for Apple, but it is also taking orders from Intel, IBM, Sony, Amazon, and the global brands. This is a very hierarchical relationship within a Foxconn factory, and you can see that interns and other production workers, they are really at the bottom of the pyramid. Now, we might think these are the usual pattern, but when we look back in the 50s or 60s in China, when it was under state socialism, we emphasize more on equal relationship. Of course, democratic planning was never that simple, but at least it was the ideal, the socialist paradigm that is quite different from the capitalist or hierarchical relationship nowadays. So we emphasize the relationship as a buyer-driven supply chain. Apple is really on top at the apex. It is not just about the military production regime or the work culture at Foxconn, but it is indeed the big push from Apple. Apple and Foxconn are two independent companies, but in the actual production chain, they are closely related. Apple give out the order, control the prices, how the work have to follow the design. They are specialized in branding and marketing, very intense work. And this is a nice pie chart to show you. If an iPhone is selling at $100, Apple will get the lion's share in terms of the gross profit, nearly 60%. Relatively speaking, Chinese workers had less than 2% in terms of the gains, and raw materials about 1/5 of the cost, and the others are the more sophisticated components or parts that are earned by other companies. So you can see that how Apple would dictate the work rhythm on the shop floor whenever during the Christmas time or some other new models they are launched out in the market. These are the fluctuations, and it means Foxconn workers are doing overtime work time and again. And it is really engulfed in the rhythm driven by these companies. These are the workers quote, "I screw the screws without a break." So human beings are really just taken like a robot, a machine, and each screw turns diligently, but they can't turn around our future. You can see how hopeless, and this is one of the quite touching poems in the book. A screw fell to the ground. In this dark night of overtime, plunging vertically, lightly clinking. It won't attract anyone's attention just like last time on a light like this, when someone punched to the ground. It is a metaphor. It does refers to the suicide, someone who just killed, have the bright red blood on the ground, but no one will just notice. They are faceless. They do not have any names. Apart from those rural workers, migrant workers, we also have these big number interns who are taken in to keep up with the production during the peak seasons. They are selling their labor effort, labor time, and the surplus value will be taken by Foxconn as well as its global buyers. The need for these flexible workers are really strong. How strong? In just one summer, more than 150,000 of these young students from all over China, they are all from technical and vocational schools. And this summer alone, there would be about 15% of the million strong Foxconn workers, and they are composed of the student interns. They are studying healthcare, auto repair, making cars, but they are now just randomly, without considering their majors, but they are all working on the assembly line without any skills assessment or learning. So indeed, this is not a genuine or a meaningful internship program. They are working the same overtime, 12 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. Interns, they do get paid. However, Foxconn, according to the very relaxing labor laws and regulations in China, do not really take them, have the like health care insurance or injury compensation pensions. They have none of these social security payments because they are not even legally recognized as an employee. They remain as students. So it is by taking advantage of all these loopholes that Foxconn, with the strong support of the local governments, human resources of these young students, ramp up the local economic situation to bring in more orders or business. They are colluding with each other and violate the laws and regulations around internship. And sometimes because of the accidents, there have been injuries and diseases. In Hong Kong, we have been joining the student activists as well as trade unions, consumers, to organize some consumer campaign in support of the interns and workers. No more exploitation, to address the problems and get some media attention. You might wonder, why didn't we do it in mainland China? The risk or the danger would be at such a high level. In China, you might be highly aware that the Trade Union Federation is a part of the state apparatus. It is integral into the party state, and the factory union, they are accountable to the manager instead of representing the workers. And independent unions in China are illegal. So to summarize now, just a couple of slides in the end. The vision or the biggest hope of spending so many years and involving a large number of students as well as activists involving in the process is our sharing about an alternate vision. Would there be anti-capitalist globalization process that is taking place, not like what we are doing now? They are selling not only their labor, but their life, really a life and death struggle on the shop floor for the profits of Foxconn, Apple, and other brands. So we need to change, and how to do it. Workers are already standing up, engaging in strikes and protests. So class struggles are also taking place in the authoritarian regime, but the costs are super high. Political activism are also going on. However, again, the consequences would be very severe. Still, we do have to really hold on to this hope, maybe a cooperative model, a more democratic planning, and that also respect gender rights, no more sexual harassment or abuses on the shop floor. So that is another model that is driven by workers, a labor-led developmental model that will be taking workers' needs and their purposes of work, their purpose of life seriously, than just being work like a screw in a big machine. So they cannot link to the final product, or they do not own anything meaningful in the process. I know these are getting much more challenging. Even in Hong Kong, half year ago, we have the passage of the national security law, and the pro-democratic activists in Hong Kong, or we have been engaging in cross-border labor organizing, and that is also becoming more politically dangerous or sensitive. But anyway, we will keep on doing all our best to engage both activism and scientific research to understand the business model. When there have been some Foxconn workers who really hope to get out from the prison because it is like a very boring job for them without seeing any prospect. Likewise, there also have been students who are trying to get into the internet world. They have been hoping to work for Amazon, Alibaba, and some other big tech companies. But what end up is also another quite difficult situation. So since about 2017 and 2018, I've been doing field work to get start another sideline, a small project, as we are finishing the book, because I have been following some workers from Foxconn factories, and they have been taking up the delivery job, delivering food, delivering express parcels. They are not even employees. They do not have the employment contract. They are so-called the independent service contractors. I have been looking into the takeout sector, as you might be also very familiar in your own country, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and some other big brands. In China, we have about 7 million of those who are engaging in food delivery. But because of the pressure on their platform, they have to deliver the food on time, under the hot sun or snowing time, windy days. It is very dangerous on the highway also. So just yesterday, I attend a media interview. If you are interested about the food delivery careers, you would want to check out the Financial Times article here. Finally, I've been also following the parcel delivery workers. When we are so easily just one click and buy the books or our iPhones from Amazon online, and especially during the last whole year about the coronavirus, the lockdown, we just work more at home to entertain, to educate, to connect with people, to do webinar like what we are doing. But when we buy our products, indeed, someone have to deliver door to door. And these are the on the ground delivery workers. I have been participating and working together side by side. I have been always misunderstood as their sister, girlfriends, or their wives, because I have never been taken as a qualified delivery worker. But it is precisely by working to pair up with them on their electric car, the free-wheel vehicle, to send each and every parcel from early morning after our sorting, screening. Is already like nearly midnight during the global shopping festival like Double 11. Then I really understand a lot better about all these secrets behind the Amazon business model is all relying on outsourcing and independent contracting. I just finished doing the, just before Christmas, sent off the accepted book chapter. So it will be appearing in Global Labor Migration that is added by Eileen, Heidi, Julie, and Zhong Chong. So hopefully there will be some more discussions about these informal workers. So thank you very much. And let me now stop sharing the screens and go back. It has been taking much longer than expected, but I will stop right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. There's so many different strands that I could follow up on, so many questions that you're asking that are so important. about the structure of the labor market, the role that college intern or high school interns play in labor strategies, all sorts of questions. But one of the things that I wanted to mention, just to bring it back to the North American context, is you mentioned Foxconn's plans in Wisconsin. And every now and then I go over to the land that was allocated for Foxconn in southern Wisconsin just to see what's happening. And nothing is really happening. They've built roads and a few empty warehouses, but it's turned out to be a huge waste of public dollars. The universities and local community colleges were also part of the planning process where students were promised jobs at Foxconn, and actually some interns were hired with the promise they would get a full-time job, but they were basically hired to meet a quota so that they would get certain tax breaks. They didn't have any real work. So anyways, the Wisconsin version of Foxconn is not going very well. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you about has to do with unpaid internships. Um, I think that there probably are cases in the United States where some companies are using interns as a cost-cutting strategy, as you found in Foxconn. But one of the more visible problems with the internship labor market in the US is the huge number of unpaid positions. We've been doing some recent research on this. In our own data set from 13 institutions, 43% of the student interns are taking unpaid positions. And what kind of blew me away was the gender disparities. There's been a few surveys in the United States about the gender disparities in unpaid internships, but we found it was 76% of those unpaid interns are women. Other surveys have found over 80% of the unpaid positions are women. And so I just wanted to ask you about some of the, well, two questions there. One about the predominance of unpaid internships for students in China or Hong Kong. And then if you had any thoughts just about gender disparities or gender dynamics when it comes to some of these positions and some of these issues.
Right. Thank you so much for two great questions. Well, even though there have been some, again, interruptions, but as much I can understand. Okay, about unpaid internship. In China, because paid payment is required by law, so indeed interns, they do get paid. But for them, if they just want to have factory work, why not they just get into the job market? At least they will have employment contract and the social insurance payment. So as a part of their study program, what they do to guide them through to learn the hands-on skills that are compatible with their majors of studies. So that should be electronics or more leaning to engineering or some basic management skills. But these are not at all the case. As we know, they have been just checking the printed circuit board or doing packaging, and some even just doing security guide position, standing there without anything to do. So they even just want to be in the dormitory to play on their PlayStation, to pretend that they are sick. All these are the visible symptoms, or what we can see that they are not interested at all. And the internship will be lasting for 6 months or 9 months or even up to a year. That is being extended between the schools as well as Foxconn. So having some pay will not be making them having some more sustainable or in the future, because they are just repeating the footsteps of their mom or dad. But when their parents really put a lot more time and money on them, they do want them to get some more substantial skills to improve their competitiveness in the job market. So what I see is a moral crisis in China right now. On the one hand, we are talking about skills enhancement or human resources training but it turns out not the case at all. Taking in interns as just according to the regulations, only 80% of the new workers pay you will be entitled to. So it means that by law they are also the cheaper labor. Okay, in the US, I have been reading a book called by Ross Perlin, and that is called Internation. And also your fabulous research team, you discover about these unpaid internship. I understand that it is a little bit class related. Maybe those who can even afford unpaid work, then they will do internship to polish their CV, but otherwise maybe not. Even the door will be opened for them, even though they are unpaid labor. So all these are indeed problematic. It does mean that the stronger regulatory regime is really needed. And about the second question on gender, what we understand in China is the job segregation pattern. Foxconn is seemingly more gender neutral. They would take whoever who come in, girls or boys, it doesn't really matter for them. They are always in the shortage of unskilled or lower cost labor. So by gender, I rather come across some other studies like hotel. They would take more pretty or taller, slimmer girls as the front on the front like receptionists. For those who have been interning in media organization like newspaper or radio stations, it seems things are a little bit more normal, or they are learning something, and that might be also more mixed with girls and boys, right? They are Matthew. Can you also hear me?
Yeah, you cut out a little bit, but we're back.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you, Jenny. And I have one more question. Oh, I have a lot, but I'll ask one more. But if any of our attendees have any questions for Jenny, please put it in the chat and we can ask. I'm really curious about how different colleges and universities have handled internships during the pandemic. Before our webinar started, you and I were chatting about online internships. And that's something that we're studying at our center because so many were either canceled outright or converted to online because of COVID. And I'm just curious, in China and in Hong Kong, not about the vocational colleges, I'm asking more about the academic institutions. Were a lot of internships converted to online experiences, or were they canceled outright, or was there some other solution that colleges and employers found?
Right. What I understand is throughout the whole year of 2020, many internship programs were just canceled. And the problems in China is that the whole city would completely lock down. No buses, rails, and some other facilities are not just available. And it becomes so complicated for the teachers to accompanying the students to the designated workplace, no matter it is a company, a factory, or some other workplaces. So many of the internship programs are either suspended or entirely canceled. Are there any better alternative? What I understand is they remain at home, or some just do the revisions based on the textbook. So not much hands-on experience. When they do internship, usually it is not just about learning skills, but also communicating with people. So it is more intangible, like cultural capital, teamwork, cooperation, some value so that the transition between the vocational school and their future career, the ideal work that they want to take, would have a smooth transition. But it turns out to be really chaotic. As far as I understand, very soon from now, after a month, it will be our Chinese New Year festival. And after that, hopefully, springtime is coming. Vaccine is now also, had already got lots of testing, and injection have been also planned, lining up. Hopefully, more on-site internship will take place. Online internship is not working really well. Partly because of the computing system, but the other thing is really lack of the capable instructors who are going to lecture or to provide them with the appropriate assignment or skills tests. So all those infrastructure are not suddenly really fit in or well in place. So not very well developed, quite chaotic. Lots of pressure also in Hong Kong. The parents, vocational school principals, teachers, just try to think of other assessments, and that may not be the same as the whole package or internship program as in the past.
Great, thank you, Jenny. I was curious about just the impact of the pandemic on the job opportunities for college graduates in China.
Right.
One of the things that's happening here in the United States is there's been a huge loss in jobs, but they've been disproportionately hitting hospitality, the retail sector, and a lot of low-wage workers, and disproportionately women. And so for some college graduates in fields such as business or finance, they're doing fine. But it's students in other majors or students that do not have a bachelor's degree that are really being hurt by this economy. So what's going on in China with the job opportunities for college graduates post-pandemic?
Right. Very similar to the situation in the US and other parts of the world. The adverse effect, the pandemic on the economy, that is very visible. As you just put, the airlines, hospitality sector, and some other, even just something we have been taken for granted. We will go to restaurants for tea, for lunch, for dinner, but also quite some shops are already closed. Yeah, no more dine-in services. These are low-skilled service sectors that are quite hard hit. And in China, vocational school students, when they compare with the top-tier university student graduates, the gap have been quite persistent. So with or without the pandemic, job market, the competition for them is very intense and fierce, and they are always queuing on another line, indeed not as competitive as the others. Things are quite difficult. Of course, there have been also big expansion in terms of Alibaba's business, but Alibaba is also right now being targeted in China because of financial problems or monopoly claims and some other problems. So it is really sector by sector. I will continue to observe the situation. What I understand is China is quite special in the way that the state investment is the key. When the government throws in billions of dollars to create the positions or to support the enterprises from collapsing, no matter they are the state-owned or Sino Germany joint venture, let's say, the positions could be created and maintained or even expand. So the intervention from the state, so top down, is really something quite magical than just looking into the market supply and demand. It is not purely the market mechanism itself. There have been always the visible hand of the states that are trying to work things out. But things are definitely more pressured, even facing by presidency and the top level officials now. That is why they have been always talking about resume the production as soon as possible. Just like Foxconn, they cannot produce almost at all in late January, February, but they gradually resume their production since about middle to late March. So if you look back, it's almost like 8 months or 10 months now, and factory are resuming, or they are actually catching up. By catching up, it means they are not letting some students and rural migrants resign from their position. They are being taken as quite an involuntary labor. You cannot go because we are under pressure to make up the lost time. So things are quite difficult right now. Every sector, if they have the orders, they want to get quickly back on track, but the others are already closed. And there have been some very desperate workers who cannot get their wages toward almost the end of the year when we take Chinese New Year as the reference point. So we do anticipate that there will be more collective or massive chaos that will be reported, like strike or without getting paid, they will resort to violence. So as the police, they want to so-called maintain social stability or political order, and there have been more repressive measures that are targeting workers. So things are difficult, but I do hope that the vocational school graduates, they can maybe get their jobs in the second tier city or lower level cities or towns rather than in well, logically in Beijing or Shanghai, these global mega cosmopolitan cities, there will be more jobs, but these are qualified personnel from settling in, because I can see some instability again. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jenny.
Matthew, I'm back.
Yeah, we cut out a little bit, but I'm still kind of amazed that we're able to have a conversation from California to Hong Kong via video, and all these people are watching. So I'd like to ask a question that Carrie put in the chat. She wants to hear more about your entry into the field and how you got started in your research area. Did you have an idea of the role of interns before you started your work? Or is that something that emerged from the data?
A very good question. Thank you so much, Carrie. Well, should I talk about that? Anyway, I did Undercover. I borrowed the uniform and well, anyway, for me as a Hong Kong person, I have my Hong Kong identity card. So I am indeed different. So one country, two systems, put it in that way. I do not have their identity card. It would be almost impossible for me to just apply for a job in Foxconn. But I have some other ways to get into the dormitory and to understand the situation. Interns, they look just all the same. They also put in the Foxconn uniform. They have the work ID, the work card that they put on their uniform. I spent quite some time to differentiate that they are indeed still doing their studies, but just being placed in Foxconn as the interns. the undercover research is not that difficult, because even when I was doing my master degree at the University of Hong Kong, also sociology, I got some previous experience of getting into the dormitory, just to pretend that I'm one of them. Yeah, of course I'm older than them, but you just put into the genes and to hang out with them. So quickly we would build some trustful relationship, and we can exchange a lot. I would also tell them, indeed, I'm doing my studies, and they are happy to share. I also bring them sometimes the medicine or some other useful materials or information. Sometimes it would be just as simple as a newspaper, but I will be sharing with them. So things really emerge based on our understanding about the wages, work intensity, workload, and their hope in yeah, having boyfriends or girlfriends, or even to buy a house in the city. All these are the big dreams, and they would share with me about their struggles. And about interns, then quickly I would not have any problem to take down the names of their schools, the teachers who would bring them in. I did indeed interview with the teachers as well, because in Foxconn, there had been a very rigorous ratio. One teacher with 50 interns. For those big vocational schools, there would be about 6 teachers who are bringing in 300 students to do internship. So for teachers, managers, and interns, I do interview separately. Whether I know about internship beforehand, I think it is really emerging from the field work, because after 2008 global financial crisis, there had been also the decrease in terms of exports. But Foxconn is quite outstanding in a way that it resumed quickly, recover really quickly, and get the rush order from Apple. But it is all because of the suicides. Then we want to find out the secret, why they would take lives and how to prevent it. So that was the starting point when we look into suicide or employee suicide, how to generate media pressure to stop. Because at that time there had been the discussions that it is the train of suicide. It is, you cannot even break it. You cannot hold it back. It's quite terrible, quite terrifying. So since the summer of 2010, as long as we are patient, we will understand much better about the actually the division or the fragmentation among the working class. It is not just about rural migrants. There are also agency workers. So there have been workers who are employed by for-profit agencies, and these agencies dispatch these young workers. Well, they could be rural migrants. They could also be local workers who cannot find the jobs on their own. So they end up in working for an agency. And there have been a large number of female and male students from big and small vocational schools who are also living in the same dormitory, working on the same production line. So we just as time passes, because I have been doing field work at multiple sites following the relocation of Foxconn. So there have been quite some dynamics or pattern or regularity that we can dig out from the fieldwork and interviews. So that is how the things emerge, that we pieces the things together. Official documents are right there online. They have been very proud of attracting Foxconn as the biggest local investor. But how they can produce our iPads and iPhones so quickly, it is really depending on the students. And when Apple claimed that education is their ideal, is their DNA, what a very hypocritic stance, because Apple indeed turned a blind eye to these interns who are sacrificing their future in doing these minus assembly jobs on the line.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. And for those of you in the webinar who have not read Jenny's work or her book, one of the things that she discovered was some of the administrators at vocational high schools or vocational colleges, they knew about this arrangement with Foxconn, and they actually facilitated having their students go to basically do low-paid factory line work that had nothing to do with their academic programs. On the topic of going undercover, Jenny, I have a lot of respect for you doing that. It actually crossed my mind after I read about your work to try to infiltrate Foxconn in Wisconsin. But there's nothing to infiltrate. That's the problem. But it's still at the back of my mind that if we wanted to understand more about some of these internships, we actually need to go there and be at the work site. Well, we've reached the end of our time in our webinar. Jenny, I just wanted to reiterate how much I really respect your work, and I'm glad that you're working at the intersections of worker rights, labor market structure, internships, and higher education. One of the things that you see in US and European research on work-based learning and internships is it's mostly dealt with as a learning problem or like an instructional design problem. And some of these questions about worker rights and exploitation and different macro level trends in the labor market sometimes are invisible. And so I really am glad that you're working in this space and doing such important work. I also want to ask you to be very safe and careful, not just with COVID, but everything else that's happening in your country. Both of our countries are a little tumultuous right now, and I hope that 2021 is safer and more sane than last year.
Matthew, I have been following the US presidential elections for the entire week, and I even brought the message to my students, let them understand that in China, we have the Communist Party states and even no any like voting universal suffrage. And in the US, we have been really hoping Joe Biden win, or how the voters in Wisconsin will support Democratic or Republican party. And I have been just really as nervous as many of you. So I do hope that as Trump administration is coming to an end, no more loss of lives and chaos and violence as just what the whole world have seen on the TV with the Capitol. And hopefully more meaningful educational reforms will take place. And for the nightmare in Wisconsin, maybe it is also a good a wake-up call that the state resources are rechanneled into other projects. Now, I know Foxconn people will not be happy to listen to us at all, but if they had no plan, then why taking the taxpayers' money and just wasting the time and have no any promise being fulfilled? So that is really a bigger issue on public accountability, as well as how people could get hold of the corporation or the state, whether they are responsible to us as well. So I do hope that in terms of the political situation in the US, in Hong Kong, and in China, that could in the long run more open. I think I really learned a lot from you, Matthew, and your team. It is such a strong and dynamic, always creative, a team, a center. That is something that I really admire and want to learn more. Yeah, keep in touch.
We'll definitely keep in touch. And that was all beautifully said and spoken. And we had a last question from Christine, how to best connect with you, Jenny. And I suspect, via email is fine. And if you go to Hong Kong Polytechnic, Jenny's information is on her faculty webpage. And thank you so much, Jenny. It's what, is it midnight now or 1 in the morning? I think it's time for bed.
It's 2 a.m., 2 hours past midnight. Thank you so much, Christine. How we can connect? I can go to your place and you're always welcome to Polytechnic. Indeed,
Okay.
Matthew have been hoping to go to Beijing, and I would love to also see all of you, maybe in Hong Kong, in China, or in the States. Be safe and very healthy in the new year.
Okay, thank you again. And thank you everybody for joining this first webinar of 2021. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Wu Yiyong, the Taiwanese girl. And Anthony, thank you, bye-bye. I almost did not want to log off, but anyway, bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.